InterviewsWithPower.com, your source for what makes successful people tick. Here's Jeff Stevens with your latest Interview with Power.
All right, welcome in. As the intro said, we're going to find out what makes successful people tick. Our latest interviewee is Eddy Salomon, and he is from workathomenoscams.com. Hi, Eddy. How you doing today?
Not bad, Jeff. And yourself?
I'm doing just fine. And you know what? I want to know about what got you started in your business. Now, for background purposes, of course, you can see this on the website, is that, of course, your website, workathomenoscams.com, is that you used to be the Internet Marketing Director for New York Life Insurance Company, which is a Fortune 100 company in New York City. You got so successful at what you did at home that, of course, you left the corporate world and you do your own thing now. I know your story starts even way before that, so why don't you tell me about what brought you to this point?
Basically, what happened way before my corporate career was I was doing data entry at a medical facility, and I would sit there doing it, coming, and it wasn't bad because the hospital was close by my home. But I would always think to myself, I could probably do this at home. I don't understand why I need to come into work to do this. So it sparked my curiosity, and this is when the Internet was first at its infancy. So I was just like, let me just see what's online. So
probably early to mid-'90s, you would say?
Exactly. So that's when the bug hit me. So I'm like, let me see if there's anything I can do online. So I started looking around for, work-at-home companies, and this is before Google. So finding information online was very, very difficult back then. So eventually I stumbled upon some work-at-home type of directory, and that was huge back in the days where you would pay like $20 or $50 for a directory, and allegedly you would be given all these companies that want to hire work-at-home seekers. So I went ahead, paid this fee, basically got like a disc of companies that were basically just ripped off of a Yellow Pages book. Because when you would actually call these companies and ask them about their work-at-home jobs, they're like, we have no idea what you're talking about. So I realized I was scammed, and basically this is what folks were doing in terms of work-at-home directories. And I thought to myself, I'm like, this sucks. I really don't want this happening to someone else. Let's see if there's a way that I can actually provide real work-at-home jobs. And that's basically how I got started in the industry because, it was just like I guess like a treasure hunt trying to find these legitimate opportunities. And again, you got to keep in mind, Google wasn't around, so it was very, very hard to find them. And eventually what I would start doing is finding these jobs, and then I would actually sell them originally to people from my house. And then eventually I got better with doing web stuff, created a website, changed my business model to follow more like Google, where I wouldn't charge people for it, and I would just make money in terms of advertising and affiliate marketing. And that's pretty much how I got into the business. I pretty much got scammed, didn't want anybody else going through that, so I decided I'm just going to do this myself. And I was also tired of the idea of like having someone else tell me, when I was supposed to come into work and when I can take a vacation. I never really did well with being told what to do.
Again, we're talking to Eddy Salomon, and he runs the site. I guess you could say it's even more than a site. It's the company, workathomenoscams.com. And you talk about that, Eddy, quite a bit on your website because you weave a lot of yourself through your blog posts and when you're giving people work-at-home opportunities to sift through. And you're always talking about success and the fact that the economy has changed. This is not the same economy that we grew up in. This is the economy, and now myself, I'm 44 years old, so I remember a time where it was, hey, go get a college degree, go to a company, and then, everything will be taken care of. But now a lot of it is people have to find their own opportunities in their own way because you're just not going to settle into a company, for the most part, where you're going to get the gold watch after 50 years.
Exactly. And it's funny that you say that because I was raised the same way. Like my parents are Caribbean immigrants from Haiti, and, most Caribbeans are taught the same thing. You come to this country, you work really hard, find a good job. First of all, get your education first, find a good job, and, that job will take care of you for the rest of your life. And despite them drilling that in my head, it never sat right in my soul that I would have to sit there and work for a company and they basically control my future for the rest of my life. It didn't sound right to me because in my mind, there's no such thing as job security. I'm like, as soon as my employer, decides to make any cuts or doesn't like something I'm doing, that's it. I'm done. So that never sat well with me, and I always thought to myself, I'm like, you know what, I need to figure out a way where I control my destiny in terms of my finances, and also just, I also just realized that no matter what, no company is ever going to pay me what I think I should be paid, regardless of what I do for them. And that was the other motivating factor behind it, where I'm like, I don't like the idea that another man controls my destiny. I also don't like the idea of someone else is going to tell me what I'm worth. So it always pushed me to try to find a way to get out that rat race and that 9 to 5, where I was actually in control. And sadly, this is something I've been preaching for years. And when the economy basically took a dive, people started seeing what I was talking about this so-called nonsense of job security. Because I always tell people, I'm like, how is something secure if you're not in control of it? So it's funny. Even though I was raised with those same principles, I never bought into them.
And you weave throughout your site is that what you're promoting is not get-rich-quick schemes. You're going to make $24,000 in the next 36 hours. It's all about building a business and building real value. Because let's be honest, in today's day and age, and there's nothing wrong with working for a company, and I know that you never tell people that, hey, you should be doing what I'm doing and trying to work at home. Your basic message, at least from what I can derive from your website, is that no matter what you do, you have to grind it out. You have to work hard, and you have to provide real value for whoever you're selling to. Now, whether it's within the framework of a company, if that's the direction you want to go in, or if it's working for yourself or finding these work-at-home opportunities, you have to treat everything as a business, and the success principles are very relevant to no matter what you do. And, some of those success principles you talk about, maybe you could expand on those as far as how you think of success.
Well, in terms of that, you're absolutely right. I always tell people that, it's you have to work hard at achieving whatever your goal happens to be. Like my goal happened to be that, I want to run a business, but if you're working for a company, then you have to be the best employee that you can be and add value and not just do a half-assed job, because when you do that, then those are the results that you get. So I'm a big proponent in working hard, especially when it comes to this industry. A lot of times folks come into the work-at-home industry or the online industry thinking that for some reason you don't have to put in as much work as you did offline, and that's totally false. You actually have to put more work in because you're competing against so many different people. You're not just competing for people like in your neighborhood or in your local area. You're competing against people all over the nation and world. So you definitely need to have that type of value system where you're about working hard, because if you don't, you're basically going to be left behind. So I'm very, very big on that. Like, I don't like selling people a dream that, you can't, you're not going to work hard and things are going to come easy. They don't. It's just as hard as it is offline, and you really have to grind it out to succeed. And if you don't, then you're not going to achieve the success that you want. So I'm a big, big proponent of working hard, and also just working smarter as well. Like, you hear work hard, work harder, but I'm also a big proponent of working smarter too. This is why, I'm always preaching about the philosophy of multiple streams of income, where, you should always be working towards different things and trying to bring income in different ways. I don't necessarily think it's good just to depend on your business or your job. I think you should have money coming in from different ways so that, God forbid, if anything happens, you still have money coming up from different places.
I saw a Facebook post you had. What is it? Was a chicken on a skid row and had I put all my eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And I think that really sums up, like, the philosophy that, we basically try to, like, preach on working home those scams. Like, just, basically try to find different ways of making money. Do not just depend on one thing, because we've seen in the last couple of years what happens when folks have all depended on just one job. It's one thing, to want to work for another company or be your own business person, but you should still have other sources of income coming in, and you should always be working towards that, because society has changed. You can't just depend on one company anymore.
What advice would you give to anybody that is visiting your site and says, hey, whether they're somebody that's looking to change their life or there's somebody that is going to maybe add some streams of income, what are some tenets that you would like these people to get, that you would like to get across to some of these people?
The biggest thing is, with my website and just in general, I find is it's just really important to read information. I find that a lot of people online, especially because, the internet gives us information so quickly that we're in the habit of scanning information, which isn't good because a lot of times when you scan things, you miss it. So on my website, my posts tend to be really, really long because I have a lot to say, and the folks that actually take the time to read the material, I find are the ones that are most successful. The folks that skim through it are the ones that I later hear, got scammed or aren't making money and things like that. So again, it kind of goes back to what I discussed earlier about working, okay? And in this respect, it just means reading. Like, if you're not willing to read and learn and better yourself, then you're not going to be successful. It's that simple. Everybody's looking for a shortcut, and I'm just here to tell you there isn't. You have to read. You have to work hard. You have to invest in yourself and your learning and growing for you to succeed in whatever you do. So that's basically what I try to get across in my blog posts and just all over my website, just constantly telling people, invest in yourself, read, take the time to actually do that, and more importantly, take action. A lot of times folks are just reading information, but they aren't taking any action on it, and then they're wondering why they haven't achieved what they wanted. So it's just like, it's one thing to learn and absorb information. It's another thing to take action. Without the action, all that reading that you're doing is totally useless.
And I believe that I've seen one of your posts. I think it was the AOL. It wasn't your post, but it was when AOL interviewed you a couple years back. And you talked about how hard it was to change your life. You had gone from a corporate career that is obviously demanding if you're working for a Fortune 100 company. I guess there's no jobs in the United States anymore that aren't demanding because of staff cuts and whatnot. People want, the companies definitely want more production from each worker. When you were changing your life, that was a lot of work on your end, a lot of nighttime, a lot of times where you weren't sleeping very well because you had so much work going on. So maybe speak to the what you have to do from a mental and a physical standpoint to change your life around to make yourself a success.
Well, to your point, when I worked in corporate America, I basically was there, for 7, 8 hours, 9 hours sometimes, and then I'd come home and I'd work on my website and grind on that and basically read information and buy freaking courses and ebooks and reading that stuff. And then I still had my wife at the time, didn't have my child at the time, so I was juggling that, and there would have been times, there were times where I just didn't go out and hang out with my friends, and they would just say, hey, why don't you come out? I'm like, nah, I got this internet stuff that I'm doing, and a lot of people just thought I was crazy for the amount of time that I'd put in this. I'd be up until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd have to go to work the next day. But I just knew that if I put in the work, eventually it would pay off, and my life would be a lot easier. And that's exactly what happened. For years I did that, and I didn't necessarily see the biggest return. I did see some return, but it was only in the last, I would probably say, because I've been working at home full time now for 4 or 5 years. It was maybe 2 or 3 years before that, after I just really just focused and changed my mindset. That was another key thing too. As much as I was doing this for years before that, my mindset wasn't ready. I didn't have a positive mindset. I had a lot of self-defeating thoughts. Once I started feeding my mind better information in terms of self-help books, just reading what other successful people did, it definitely changed my mindset and thus my work ethic and my action. So, you have to couple the sacrifice, your mindset, and the work ethic, and then you're able to finally see the success. If you're missing any of those things, it won't work. And that was one of the things I realized. Like, without the mindset, despite the fact that I was putting in the hours, it wasn't working. Once I got my mindset right and then applied all the other things, then it worked out really, really well. But, I had to sacrifice a lot before I got there.
Eddy, I don't remember who said this, but in Success Magazine, there was a guy that said people work as hard on their bodies sometimes, and they should be working on their minds. In other words, 3 or 4 times a week, they'll go to the gym, hour or two, but they won't feed their brain, as you were just talking about. What are some of the sources that inspire Eddy Salomon?
I'm really huge on Success Magazine. Actually, a friend gave it to me. It's actually my financial advisor, who actually turned out to be a very good friend. He actually got me a subscription to that, and so I would read that, and then I would listen to the CDs. I'm more of an audio person than actually a reader, so I'd pop in the CDs, listen to that. Obviously, Napoleon Hill is huge.
Think and Grow Rich.
Exactly, and there's another book that he just recently, not recently, but another book that he has that I just recently read. Another one that's that's really big for me and actually changed my mindset in terms of like some of my own personal fears is who moved the cheese. There's a quote in there it's basically what I try to live by now, which is, what would you do if you weren't scared? And because for me, a lot of times, as successful as I am, I'm still, I still have a lot of fears that most people have in terms of failure. So sometimes it stops me from trying different things. But once I read that book, it was like an eye-opener for me, because that's a question I constantly ask myself anytime I find myself analyzing things and not taking action. I'm like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And it leads me to action. So that was actually a very, very powerful book. Another one that I really enjoyed, and it's kind of divisive depending on who you talk to, is The Secret. The Secret, I thought, was a really, really, really life-changing book for me. It's actually, after I read that book, is basically when everything else changed in my life, because I changed my mindset and I actually started taking action. I think a lot of times when people read like the book The Secret, they just think it's a bunch of like voodoo and just positive thinking and blah, 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 blah. But if you actually take the time to read the book and listen to the message, they tell you your mindset's one aspect, but you also have to take action. So when I did that, it really, really changed my life. Because after that, I saw things differently. I was seeing opportunities that I didn't see before. I had more of a positive mindset. So those are the type of books that I've actually read that have made a huge impact on me.
So maybe the takeaway we can take from this interview, you like that takeaway from the interview? The take of the takeaway, whatever. I guess we're coming to the end of the interview when I'm starting to flub up like that. But the takeaway here is that you have to work hard, you have to take action, and you have to continue to study, and you can't take anything for granted.
Exactly. I think as soon as you become complacent, then that's when everything falls apart. You got to constantly push yourself and just feed yourself in different ways, to what you said earlier, where, there are people that will work out but won't feed their minds. And, and people, I don't know what it is nowadays, but people seem to be afraid of work, and everybody thinks that, everything should come easy, and it doesn't. You still have to grind really, really hard. And the great thing about the times that we're living in now is the Internet makes it a level playing field for everyone. You could basically take advantage of this tool and use it to your advantage, whether you're looking for a job or you're trying to start your own business. There's more information available to you now than there has been, for generations before this. So there isn't really a reason why folks shouldn't succeed unless they're not, putting in the effort. So it's a perfect time to actually succeed because of the technology and all the tools that are available at your fingertips.
Well, Eddy Salomon, workathomenoscams.com. Definitely check out that website. It is a great website, chock full of a lot of information. They can hear more about you there. Definitely appreciate you stopping by interviewswithpower.com.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.